All right, welcome to this week's episode of Culture Bust. I am super excited to have a friend, a colleague, and an exceptional mentor of mine, Jeff Gatt. Jeff, welcome to the show, my man.
Drew, how you doing, buddy? Great to see you.
I'm doing fantastic. This week's topic is going to be on positional power. Now, Jeff is the CFO of his organization and has an exceptional career with a ton of experience in managing people and motivating people, and has an awesome just discussion point that he wants to get on with positional power. So Jeff, can you talk to me about what is positional power?
Yes, Drew, thanks. Positional power is really leading and managing by virtue of your title or role alone. You know, it's funny, I think back on this, and I think this will strike a chord with a lot of folks, but if you recall back when we were kids, how many times did we hear from our parents, because I said so? You know, you never got a why, you never got, an explanation, because I said so. That was a perfect example of positional power. They were in the position of parents, and it was their way or the highway. And that, because I said so, just made it right. And that can carry into leadership if you don't provide an opportunity to articulate the why behind your decisions.
I think you're going to step on some toes today. This is gonna be good.
You know what, Drew? You've known me long enough that I practice radical candor. I try and be direct. I think that there's no room to really beat around the bush when you have to help folks learn how to grow and move forward. So yeah, we'll step on a few toes here.
Well, let me ask you this: why can positional power be perceived as bad, negative?
Well, you know, leadership is not necessarily about having the position. You can lead without having the role or the title. However, when you do get that manager role or you do get that title, it's implied that there's an expectation that you will lead. However, if you're only using the title role as the sole rationale for your leadership decisions, again, because I said so, because I'm sitting in the seat, your ability to influence your peers and your team is significantly hampered.
It's unfortunate. I think a lot of leaders do lead with that, and it's probably because they've been coached that way themselves, either by a mentor of theirs or maybe even their parent. I don't know. Can you think of a time when positional leadership is actually viewed as good or necessary?
Well, I think absolutely there's some times when it's necessary. And Drew, you can speak to this probably a lot better than I can. But, you know, in the military, there's a chain of command. And in that chain of command, there is no negotiating. There are decisions that need to be made predicated on your leader's experience, and you just follow those orders and or directives. And that's absolutely appropriate. And at times in certain negotiations, you know, when you're negotiating a deal and you're trying to get something to happen, sometimes that title matters. And sometimes the individual on the other side of the table really wants to understand, am I actually dealing with somebody who has decision-making power? And that can be used to your advantage to be able to have that title to say, yes, I am in that role to be able to make the decision. But after that, when you're talking about leading teams, when you're talking about, you know, leading your groups, if you're only doing it because you're sitting in that seat or you have that title, that's where it becomes really challenging to be able to truly lead and influence people.
Wow, man. I mean, are there other forms of influential power that can be leveraged or used?
You know, there's a great book. John C. Maxwell's written a plethora of books regarding leadership. And one of his books is The 5 Steps of Leadership. And he calls them the 5 Ps. And again, 5 Ps. The first P is position. You should strive for the position. You should strive for the role. You should strive for the title. But that's the first of the 5 main steps that true leadership works on. The next is really permission. And what he means by permission there is earn trust to be able to influence. And you have to shift the focus from yourself to others. you have to value the people around you. With that, you're treating them with respect. And as we know, respect is earned and respect is a two-way street. So you should be striving for that ability to say, listen, yes, I'm in that role, but I respect you, and let's have that mutual respect back and forth. But that you can't just stop there, because part of being a leader and part of making things happen is you have to produce. And his third P is production, but you need to produce the right results, concentrate on the right goals, and make sure your team is in alignment with those goals, which again, if it's just your goal, you're getting back to that because I said so. So this permission production kind of works hand in hand with you going out and earning their respect and then saying, listen, we need to produce results. From there, one of the things that's really important to me is continual learning for both yourself and your team. That personal development, I try and teach the folks that I deal with on a daily basis, learn one nugget, just something new today that you didn't know yesterday. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to read a book a day. You don't have to go and spend hours and hours. Just find one nugget and then learn it. And then pile those nuggets on each other day after day after day. And if you really think about that, if you're doing that, think about how more valuable you are to yourself and your organization a year from now or 2 years from now. But really, personal development and continual learning are one of the biggest steps to a leader. And the final piece for me is, and this is where Maxwell would say, if you're at the pinnacle of a leader, you are actually doing everything you can to train and develop your successor. You should never fear sitting in the seat, helping somebody grow that could actually take your seat. Because to me, there's nothing more rewarding to a leader to be able to know, hey, you know what? I trained that person well enough to do what I do and do it better.
That's fantastic advice. Wow. I'm just kind of like chewing on that for a second. That's really good. But I think for other leaders that are out there, whether they're in positional power, actual positional power, or perceived positional power, do you have any tips for them today that you would give?
There's a couple things that I learned. Human nature, you can have 10 positives and 1 negative. And that negative will hold as much weight in mind share for an individual, that 1 negative to 10 positives. And it's very important to understand that when you are approaching even something that seems as not as innocuous as requesting a meeting. I used to send out to my team via email or through instant messaging, hey, can you come to my office, ? Well, I knew it was just, I had a quick question, but the person on the other end of that is starting to go, oh my goodness, what did I do wrong? Why is he calling me to the office? And so one of the things I've done, and I try and do this religiously, is anytime I request a meeting, I do actually 2 things. One is I put the why. Hey, do you got a second? I need to discuss this. Hey, can you come to my office? I have a question regarding this. That completely takes any potential negative out of the meeting, the situation. And then what I also try and do is, wherever possible, if I'm going to have these impromptu meetings, do it on their turf. Get out of my office, get out of my chair, walk over to their cube, walk over to their office, and say, hey, do you got a moment? I would like to come to your office and discuss this. By doing that, you take that whole positional piece completely out of it. You show them respect. You show them that you care. You show them that you're looking at them as peers, not necessarily subordinates. And you're asking them for their buy-in while explaining the why. And there's a great book by Donald T. Phillips on Lincoln on leadership. And Abraham Lincoln dealt with probably the most difficult time this country has ever faced. And one of the things that made him such a successful leader was the concept of MBWA, which is management by wandering about. This has been out there, but get out of your office, go and talk to the different organizations in your people, and you will completely diffuse this perceived positional power. And then the final piece is, when constructive criticism is warranted, because leaders, you need to be able to do that, There's another fantastic book out there by Kim Scott called Radical Candor. And that's being direct, being immediate with your constructive criticism, but do it with empathy. Remember, at the core of all of this, we're all human beings. We all have human emotions. We're not just robots coming in and out. And if you can practice some of those things, I think you can completely eliminate the perception of you're only leading because you're sitting in that seat.
Jeez. This is really good. Like, I wish we could like continue this. I think it's pretty easy for this entire audience to understand why, one, I had you on the show, two, why I consider you a mentor and cling to so much wisdom that you're willing to bestow to everybody. Guys, this is Jeff Gatt on Positional Power or Positional Leadership here on Culture Bust. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, Drew. Appreciate it, buddy.